Good morning, Linda here from Huttons Valley Permaculture. This morning I'm going to be doing some planting in the veggie garden before heading off to a project that I've had on the go that I'm going to be sharing with you. But first, I'd like to thank everybody who commented on my last video about battling snails and slugs, who shared some really fantastic ideas. The first idea I got was just putting a quarter of a teaspoon of salt into some water in a spray bottle, and I thought that would be fantastic for dealing with all the little critters that are down deep in a celery plant, for instance. I also had Ruby commenting that you do need to remove all these bottom leaves that perhaps are dying off, and they attract slugs just by being there. I also had viewers mentioning about the beer trap, which is something I used in the past but just had kind of forgotten about. And I've also had other viewers suggest that using soy sauce and oil mixture instead of beer works just as well. And another suggestion was just getting a plank of wood, probably bigger than this one so you can catch more, and just popping that in the garden, and that gives the snails or slugs somewhere to hide under, and you can just sort of pick that up in the morning and they're all going to be here. So that might save me coming out in the night. Another interesting comment I had was to do with growing celery. One of my viewers had particular success this year because she shaded her celery plants that apparently are an understory plant and don't do so well in really hot conditions. Now, I did have fairly hot days during summer and I just left these plants as is. Maybe the weeds shaded them a little bit, but not sufficiently. So next season, I'm going to make sure on those hot days in particular that I keep these plants covered. I love sharing what I do in the garden, but it actually gives back to me just as much as it gives to you guys. Having those comments and having people give solutions to some of my issues really does help, and it helps us all. So please keep those sorts of comments coming. But today I'm going to get onto the planting in this area that I cleared the other day. I had been out already and put down some decomposed wood chips, which I did water over the top of because it did seem very dry. So I think it's ready to plant into now. But I just have to show you first my little pea patch, and cross my fingers or touch wood or something that the slugs stay away. They have so far. Some seedlings I've got today are some red beetroot, some Chioggia beetroot, and I've got a few Tuscan kale to replace those that I've taken out. So I won't be needing all of those, but I'll just put a few of those in. I'm just going to put 3 of these seedlings, this is the Tuscan kale, through the middle of the garden and put the beetroot on either side. Now, growing this many seedlings is fantastic because I don't need all of them all the time, but it means you've got spares to replace other little plants if, you know, the slugs do get them. The kale that I put in the other day, there was a few eaten down, so I've replaced those with the other plants that I had. That was the curly leaf kale. Maybe I'll put 4 down. Okay, and then you can just tuck in the others and roll them up again. And I'll just keep looking after that lot. Now I'm just going to offset them a little bit through the middle to give them each a bit more space. Oh, it's still very dry even though I watered it. But we'll give it a bit more water once we've got these plants in, and that should bring it to life. Now I'll get these beetroot done. That's my Chioggia. I think using ties on these little snails is better than these elastic bands, unless you get really good quality elastic bands, because they seem to break. And that's how my labels have all got mixed up. So I can just grab these and spread them around. Look how long those roots are. Now I don't mind planting beetroot sort of in clumps of say about 3 or even 4. Sometimes you find one of them gets larger quicker and you can harvest that and leave the others to grow all in the same space. So I'll kind of bunch these together and plant it like one plant. I've kind of got my gloves on and off. I find handling these little seedlings easier without gloves on. And I'll just get my hands dirty instead rather than break them. There we go, there's one little clump. Oh, I think that's some sorrel roots right there. Okay, that's that lot in. The decomposed wood chip is quite hydrophilic, which means it's hard to kind of get it wet. So I'll keep watering these little plants through the day just to make sure that they have had a good water in. But what I'll be doing when the plants get a little bit bigger is adding in some of my unfinished compost as mulch. I've added it recently around these leek plants, and I find when I water it, the water just sort of stays in place and doesn't run off, and keeps the plants a lot happier. That and the extra nutrition for both the plants and the soil makes them really happy. So in my spare time, I'll try and get round to all these little garden beds that are quite a bit larger now and add in that extra mulch layer. But no time for that now. I'm determined to get onto this project today that I've just been doing bit by bit. Let me share what I'm doing. Just along this side of this driveway is my top fence on the top paddock, and this tree line forms a wind shelter for my animals when they're up in this top paddock. Now it also forms a wind shelter for my bees, and unfortunately where my bees are, the trees have been dying off. Now they were just pioneer species like acacias. There was a kangaroo apple, another native, that grows quickly and dies quickly. And what's happened here is a lot of the grasses have grown up, and it's also allowed blackberries to grow up and through as well. And along the section that sort of lines the paddock where my animals sort of graze, it has its own issues with blackberries and the dying wattles as well. A few months back I was harvesting blackberries off these vines, but the time's come to actually do something about it. Might have to do something about that wombat hole too. I reckon the little lambs would be able to sneak under that fence now. But we'll put that on the list. Now what's created some issues is the power lines up there. We have crews from the electrical company come down and prune the trees, but they seem to just kind of dump it all through this tree line. And that makes it pretty challenging to get in and cut the blackberries down. Hence, they've kind of got huge like they are at the moment. Last year, I did get in and clear a lot of the blackberries through this section here. But then when someone comes in and dumps, that's just a lot of the dead cleared tea tree. It's just been piled up there. It means I can't get down to find where the blackberries are growing, and I can't knock them back very easily. So what I've got to do is cut the branches, drag it out, clear where the blackberries are. If I can shred that material and return it, that would be great, but that's going to be very time consuming. So I'll probably just take it away, shred it and use it somewhere else, and maybe just keep this area clear for a while so I can brush cut and get that blackberry down and kind of knock the life out of it over the next couple of years. In the section just behind me here, the blackberries have really taken off. I did do some brush cutting just at the start, but then I came across the fallen branches, so I really need to get the chainsaw in there, chop it up and drag it out. There's also some pittosporums, which are kind of like an invasive species really, a species you spreads around too readily, and we really don't want that there, so I might get in and chop that down as well. So this will be an ongoing project for quite a while. I've spent 2 days, well not 2 days, what I do is use my brush cutter for 1 tank full of petrol and then use my chainsaw for a tank of petrol, and that kind of does me for the day. That's all the, chopping and cutting that my body can handle. So I've done that a couple of days, so I'm back here again today to clear out some of the stuff. What I need to do is work on the section around my bees to start with and get that planted out, because I don't want it completely cleared, because the wind shelter for them is really important. Just on the other side of this section are where my bees are, so I have to be mindful of them. If I'm using a brush cutter and a noisy chainsaw near them, after a while they really become aggravated by that and might start to give you a bit of grief. When I had my gate put in, I had to suit up the 2 gentlemen that were helping me put it in because they didn't like the noise they were making. So I kind of go bit by bit, just assess how they are, and if they look like they're showing interest in me, I just sort of call it for this area. But my plan today is to clear all of this away, take it out of here, so then I can attack the next section. And what I might have to do is just kind of leave some of these grasses and maybe even some of the blackberry on the fence line, just to keep the windbreak in place while I get some other trees growing up beyond the fence line. I'd rather be spending this time out in my vegetable garden, but it's important to get this sort of thing under control. Once I get the blackberries cleared and all the old growth gone, I can replant it, probably with Banksias and maybe some grevilleas, plants that last a while, that are bee friendly and bird friendly, and everyone will be happy. And it should all grow big enough to maintain that windbreak function. Well, I'm nearly done here for today. I have been moving all the sticks and loading it up in the back of the car first, and then I brought my trailer up for the next load. I've still got to get my chainsaw out again and chop up some more of the branches to get them in the trailer. I've uncovered some logs that were buried, so I'll be able to attack those now too with the chainsaw and maybe get down a couple of these sort of stumps down a bit further. Now, with all the grasses that I dragged out of here, I have used those in my compost near the hay shed. That's where animal remains go when the butcher has been. So it's good to be able to load it up with that sort of stuff and put it to good use, really. So I'm about to get the chainsaw going, but I thought I'd finish off with this bit of the video just in case my bees decide they don't like me and all the noise, so I can make a quick getaway if I need to. These sorts of jobs are never quick and they're never easy, so I don't plan on doing them in a kind of restricted time frame really. I just know that I'll get out here, do what I can when I can, and eventually the job will get done. I'm hoping to at least, before winter comes, clear that little end and get one of my Banksias planted and maybe a little grevillea sort of nearby, and then sort of keep tackling the rest of it as time allows. First up this morning, I'm going to just weed this little bed here. I have been trying to keep on top of it in regards to the weeds, so it's not too bad. And then I'm going to get the mulch onto it. Like I was saying yesterday, the mulch will help hold on to moisture. We've got a lot of rain coming on Sunday, so I want to get as much of this mulch down as possible before then, just to make the most of that rain. The mulch will also help suppress some of these weeds. The plants in this garden are getting bigger, and this kind of unfinished compost will be just perfect on here. They're certainly not too small, and if birds kick it around, they're not going to be inundated with it and sort of covered over, but it's going to help feed them and kind of keep them growing really well. I've been out the last few nights getting as many slugs and snails as I can, and in this bed I did come across a little frog, and I started to feel a bit guilty that I was taking some of its food, but I think there's plenty of slugs in this garden to kind of keep it happy, really. Well, on the topic of slugs and snails, one of the suggestions from my viewers that I forgot to mention yesterday was to get a couple of ducks in the garden. Now, I do have 7 ducks out on my dam, but I don't know how I can get them up here to get the pests. But one of my other viewers, she suggested that ducks don't really like the slugs anyway, and that they prefer snails. I don't really have an experience of having the ducks up in my garden, so I don't really know. And Bill Mollison, one of the founders of Permaculture, certainly said if you've got slugs and snails, you don't have a slug or snail problem, you've got a duck deficiency problem. So he was certainly a fan of ducks as helpers in the garden. Weeds are mostly out of here now, so I'll get on my mulch and keep these plants thriving. It's at this point that you're kind of really pleased you put in the effort to get the compost going, so you have all this wonderful material to use, and it kind of just makes the garden feel so cared for, almost like tucked in for winter. It's hard to believe that some of these plants were just so small. When you first put them in as seedlings, the garden looks just so bare, like you need to shove in more stuff, but they grow so quickly and they're huge before you know it. For instance, this is the bed I planted yesterday, and this is the bed I planted out a couple of months ago. These plants are just enormous. This is a Savoy cabbage, and it's just starting to form its head there. Beautiful. Or sometimes when I am focused on slugs and snails at this time of year, I forget about the little green caterpillars that can still be an issue on brassicas. They can eat down small seedlings really quickly. Not so much of an impact on these bigger plants. Where have you gone to? But it's nice to move them on all the same. That's better now. Be less of these holes in the plants. Well, that's all nicely covered. I don't really need to give this gardener water, but I'm going to, just to get all of that mulch hydrated and ready to receive Sunday's rainfall. It'll also wash some of that compost off that I've dropped on some of these leaves and freshen everything up. Everything looks so much better when there's some glistening water on the leaves. The next thing I'm off to do is just a little bit of a harvest and some planting. But first of all, I'm pretty excited to show you that my snow peas are starting to produce. Not enough to really give me a meal as yet, but pretty exciting all the same. If I look closely, there's quite a few that are of a decent size actually, so I might be able to shred those up and include them in a salad. But what I did want to harvest are these aging spinach plants that are well and truly worth harvesting. Well, this one's actually going to seed, but we'll grab them all out, and I've got some young seedlings to replace them. So I'll just cut these out, give the area a bit of a weed, and then we can get the younger plants in. There's one of our little friends. At night time when I come out here, I do find quite a few of these guys on the spinach. Must be one of their favourites. And while I'm here, I might grab this daikon. I don't know how deep it will go, but that's looking harvestable. We'll be able to get that slug out of there too. And that removes all of that leaf from shading what we've got in there, the garlic and the other little spinach plants that we'll be adding. Now, someone asked me in the comments what I do with daikon radish, my favourite thing to do is make a sweet pickle with them along with carrots, and it's really nice to add that to like a Vietnamese style salad. You can also shred them up and use them sort of in stir fries. Really quick growing food. I'll quickly get this weeded and we'll get our plants in. I'll be able to sneak in the spinach in amongst these garlic plants. There we go, finished spinach out, new young spinach in its place. I'll add some coarser mulch to this garden bed when those plants are a little bit bigger. Next up, we're going to plant these pea plants. Now, I planted these in these snails as a bit of a backup plan for these peas, but they're starting to come out the bottom now, and I really think they need to get into the ground. So I've had a look at my pea bed, and in between where my beetroot are and the first row of peas, I've kind of got quite a bit of space, and I reckon I can squeeze these plants in along there. Yep, I reckon a couple of rows in there will be perfect. There's 22 little plants with fantastic root systems. So I'm going to make 2 rows of 11. It'll be interesting to see how the growth of these plants that have been transplanted compare with the growth of those that have been seeded direct that don't have that transplant shock. So we'll keep an eye on this and just see how they go. Well, the planting's all finished, and so has today's video. Now, if you've enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like, and also if you can just give it even a thumbs up in the comments, it really helps the algorithm and puts my video in front of more people. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.